and will put together a set of recommendations that shall be handed over to the Indian Sherpa for the consideration of the BRICS leaders under the formal track. In the past, the academic discussions have yielded significant result. The New Development Bank, the CRA, are all products of these academic deliberations, and I'm confident that what we discuss over the next 4 days will shape the BRICS agenda for the future. We are very grateful to all our BRICS colleagues from the BRICS countries for their support and for being with us digitally in these difficult times. It is also important to recommend and congratulate the Russian presidency, who presided over the BRICS at a difficult period. I am sure that irrespective of distances, a closer digital BRICS will ensure that its voice is significant and its impact is substantial. We, the BRICS academic community, would like to congratulate the Indian presidency and the Indian Sherpa for all the work that has already gone into making this a very successful and productive year. We are looking forward to hearing from the BRICS Sherpa, Mr. Sanjay Bhattacharya, at the concluding session of the academic forum, and we want to thank once again Mr. P. Harish and his team at the MEA for the wonderful work that has already gone into this significant and substantial BRICS program. So let me conclude by once again welcoming you all to the BRICS Academic Forum. I'm sure you'll find the next 4 days useful and rich with ideas. Let me thank all my colleagues, and let me wish all of them a very rich 4 days of debates, discussions, and deliberations. With this, I am delighted to welcome Dr. S. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister of India, to deliver the inaugural address.
Dr. Samir Saran, Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi, dear friends. In 2021, BRICS turns 15. In human terms, this is young adulthood with thought shaped and a worldview concretized, and with a growing sense of responsibilities. As such, India's presidency of BRICS comes at such an inflection point for this grouping. But the context is important for the global system as well. This is most tellingly felt in the pandemic that has devastated economies and societies. The juncture then is pregnant with challenges as well as opportunities. The role of the BRICS countries, of the ideas, strategies, and policies they contribute has never been so apparent. The birth of BRICS was an implicit recognition that the post-war order had peaked. Emerging economies needed to step up to craft a new developmental framework. Each of us was well placed to do this, to share our experiences in some measures or the other with partner countries of, but not limited to, the global south. We intuitively understood that the dominance moment at the end of the Cold War could not be sustained. BRICS was a response to the search for diversity. In many ways, it was an accurate anticipation of multipolarity. So let us therefore remember that counter-dominance instinct and principled commitments to multipolarity in all forms, political and economic, academic and institutional, social and cultural, is written into the DNA of BRICS. It was in this spirit of independence and complementarity that India co-founded BRICS. We are confident that this sentiment will continue to define not just BRICS, but the larger template for coming decades of the 21st century. BRICS is a statement of global rebalancing that underlines its essential diversity and pluralism. Now, India's presidency of BRICS is underpinned by 4 pillars: reform of the multilateral system, counter-terrorism cooperation, technological and digital solutions for sustainable development goals, and enhancing P2P people-to-people cooperation. These pillars may seem abstract or even perennial, but each one of them actually has an explicit real-world meaning. An updating and recalibration of the post-World War II multilateral architecture cannot be postponed any further. The pandemic and the normative breakdown in its wake have rudely reminded us that institutions built to tackle problems of the 1940s desperately need to be upgraded and made fit for purpose for our century. An expansion of the permanent membership of the Security Council is a necessary ingredient, but by itself it is not sufficient. Multilateral institutions have been disadvantaged by structural inertia, competitive gridlocks, uneven resourcing, and skewed navigation. The proliferation of new and smaller platforms, including of plurilateral and regional groups, is therefore a response to such felt gaps. BRICS itself was actually among the earliest in this regard. Too often, we obsess with one or the other response. More effort and action is actually required to fill the gaps. Terrorism thrives in some of these gaps. Its nursery lies in conflict-ridden spaces, made fertile for radicalization by malign players, including states. The transition in Afghanistan that we are seeing today, and the warfare that has yet again been forced upon its people, has sharpened this challenge. Left unattended, its edge will be deeply felt, not just in Afghanistan's neighborhood, but well beyond. We are therefore all stakeholders in the quest for a clear, coordinated, and undifferentiated response to terrorism. In the 21st century, legitimacy cannot be derived from mass violence, brutal intimidation, or covert agendas. Representation, inclusion, peace, and stability are inextricably linked. Emerging technologies, most strikingly digital technology and the energies of the internet, are a force multiplier in any avenue of human endeavor. As we have learned to our cost, these can also become an instrument for sources of extremism and motivated misinformation. For us in India, digital tools have proved invaluable in pushing back the pandemic. In the year and a half of living and coping with the COVID-19, they have accelerated contact tracing, vaccine delivery, online and mobile-based diagnosis, and targeted delivery of welfare. India's 800-400 accomplishment, that is, food rations for 800 million people and cash transfers to 400 million, has been streamlined by digitally enabled technology. The surge in online education has also been noteworthy. Many of these empirical experiences will stay with beyond the pandemic. For example, the catalytic implications of technology in the realization of sustainable development goals are there for us to recognize. The pandemic has demanded a price in terms of economic growth and has challenged SDG timelines. Technology could help us now recover ground and time. India is optimistic on this score and ready to share what it has harnessed, innovated, and learned in these last years. Finally, we come to our people, the principal and most essential stakeholders of BRICS, and in fact of our larger developmental enterprise. The past years has made more of us alive to the limitations of an economic model that posits efficiency and pricing as antithetical to people and community, or indeed to livelihoods and sustainability. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's call for a human-centric globalization was not just a recognition of pandemic-induced distortions, but in fact of broader inequities. Welfare and well-being of people, families and communities cannot be divorced from the global reset and resilience that is occurring in the long tail of COVID-19. A case in point is the imbalance between the emphasis on IPR in the pharmaceutical industry and the meeting of public health goals. Left untouched, the current practices will only delay the elimination of the pandemic by several years. This is simply not acceptable. But beyond health is a larger economic lesson for the world from the pandemic. The creation of more reliable and resilient supply chains is vital to infuse greater confidence in the global economy and, in fact, to de-risk it from future pandemics. The global south is particularly vulnerable in that regard. Investments must diversify to provide a certain assurance of sustainability for livelihoods, for families and communities, and of course, for the natural environment. During the course of the year, on the road to this BRICS Academic Forum, scholars from universities and think tanks have deliberated on such issues, specifically on global health, the future of work, climate change, global economic recovery, green energy, trade, and digital public goods, and women-led economic growth. This conference represents the culmination of a rich and substantial intellectual exercise. I look forward to policy prescriptions that can make BRICS more effective and our world more secure. These two aspirations are symbiotic. A world at peace with itself across domains will add to BRICS capacities, and enhanced BRICS capabilities will contribute surely to global well-being. So I thank you once again, and I convey all the best for the rest of the forum.
Thanks a lot, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, for very substantive address today. You have highlighted the broad areas of concerns that the BRICS community as a whole is trying to address, should be addressing, and would address after heads of the summit meet later next month. It is important for us to take cognizance of the points that Honorable External Affairs Minister has mentioned. His emphasis on consolidation of the BRICS process, his emphasis on the idea of how the global architecture is unfolding when we are trying to see the major challenges cope up, the rising tensions all across, the fragmentation that has emerged in supply chains, the fragmentations that are there in global economic policy making, particularly post-COVID crisis. The EAM was very precise and very clear. Friends, as you know, this process has moved in last couple of weeks when ORF and RIS have contributed in terms of bringing all different actors, the BTTC members, the BRICS academic community together. We have discussed several issues. We have discussed issues related to how this consolidation of the BRICS, what EAM just now emphasized, is going to go forward. We are also very keenly looking into the question of rejigging multilateralism, the idea of sustainable development goals, the security-related issues, women empowerment and their engagement with economic dimensions of the world that is bringing in what kind of future for jobs. And we have brought in these several issues. They were discussed in last several sessions that were there. Again, today onwards, there are a couple of sessions planned where we would be bringing in several of these issues. International security issues, digital BRICS are some of the other areas which we are going to go forward. The BRICS framework for green energy is something that we already had a long session. We covered some of them, and we are also trying to see how the larger pandemic-affected economy is going to address global health issues. BGTC members and some of us would be working together to see how some of these dimensions would come forward as part of the outcome document that would be there. Next 2 days, we all would be engaged in this productive exercise, tone for which is very well said by the address that Honorable External Affairs Minister has just delivered. My very dear friend Samir Saran also raised some of these issues in the initial remarks. His emphasis and focus on consolidation process BRICS at 15 was very clear. And I think this would also help us see how larger dimensions of our work program are going to go forward as over the next 2 days we are going to go forward. This partnership is very well founded on the past experience of 2016 when ORF and RIS worked together, and I'm sure towards the end of this, when we are there for the validatory session, we all would be together in terms of coming up with concrete recommendations to heads of the state. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're joining us. It is good evening here in India.
That is the spirit in which we would like to introduce CoWIN, which we believe is a platform that can be adapted and scaled up for health interventions across the globe. We would like, through this event, to share our experience of developing and operating this platform. We stand ready to make the CoWIN platform available to our partner countries. We will begin the proceedings with the words of wisdom and guidance from the Honorable Prime Minister of India. I welcome you all again and thank you for your participation in this global conclave. Namaskar.
Distinguished ministers, senior officers, health professionals, and friends from all over the world. Namaskar. I'm delighted that such a large number of experts from various countries have joined us for the CoWIN Global Conclave. At the outset, I convey my sincere condolences for all the lives lost to the pandemic in all the countries. There is no parallel to such a pandemic in 100 years. Experience shows that no nation, however powerful that nation is, can solve a challenge like this in isolation. The biggest lesson from the COVID-19 pandemic is that for humanity and the human cause, we have to work together and move ahead together. We have to learn from each other and guide each other about our best practices. Right from the beginning of this pandemic, India has been committed to sharing all our experiences, expertise, and resources with the global community in this battle. Despite all our constraints, we have tried to share as much as possible with the world. And we remain eager to learn from global practices. Friends, technology is integral to our fight against COVID-19. Luckily,